Welcome to the Derek Weaver Company. This is an instructional video on familiarizing you with the internal components of the Weaver tire changers. All of our tire changers use very similar internal components. Let's follow the airflow through our simulator. The air comes in here to the separator and regulator assembly, and the water separator can be drained manually by pressing up at the bottom. The regulator can be adjusted by pulling the knob up or down and following the directions on the top for more or less, and it can be monitored here on the gauge. Then the air flows into the oiler, and the oiler can be filled through the orange fill cap with no air to the tire changer, and then the regulation of the oil drip can be adjusted by the brass screw at the top of the oiler. The airflow comes up from the oiler into the bead breaker valve, where it also goes over to the clamp valve. But the bead breaker valve is nothing more than an A-B switch. One line has constant pressure to it, which causes the piston to always be out. When you press the pedal, the air simply goes to the other line, which forces the piston in. If you were trying to determine whether or not you had a bad seal in a cylinder, you could take the line that has no pressure on it, which would be the front line, loose from the fitting, and you should not have any air coming out of that hose. It's also true if you were to press the cylinder down and take the other line loose, you should have no air coming out of here. That tells me that the seals inside my cylinder are good. If you were to hear a leak from your bead breaker valve, it could also be a seal leaking in here, because if the air's coming through here and leaks past the cylinder, it will come here and leak out the exhaust valve. So you need to check the bead breaker cylinder first. Here's an example of a bad bead breaker cylinder. The seals are bad in this cylinder, and you can see by pressing the pedal, we're going to switch the air from the back side of the cylinder to the front side. The air is now traveling this way, pushing the cylinder back. But it has bypassed the seals and it's leaking in the valve. That could be misconstrued as a bad bead breaker valve, but it's not. It's air leaking through the seals on the cylinder. The air is now going through this hose, through the seals, out the back side, and it should not. This is a quick exhaust valve. You have one located at each end of your bead breaker cylinder, and its purpose is to quickly exhaust the air on the side of the cylinder that isn't charged. And how it does that is it has a diaphragm inside the valve that allows it to exhaust the air out the exhaust muffler on the quick exhaust valve. If you do hear a big leak, these would be something to check. The airflow also tees from the bead breaker valve over to the clamp valve. And the clamp valve works just like the bead breaker valve did with the A and B lines. It's just an A and B switch. But if you follow the lines down, you come to the rotating union, and then the lines divide out to either end of one of the clamp cylinders, and they are also connected in parallel. There will be two of them that tee off. The difference between the bead breaker valve and the clamp valve is the clamp valve is supplied with this rod and cam, which allows you to feather the clamp cylinders to change for the diameter of the rim that you're using. You can check a clamp cylinder just like you checked a bead breaker cylinder by taking the air from the uncharged line, which in this case would be this side because the air is charging this end of the cylinder, pushing the piston out. So we can disconnect it here, and we shouldn't have any air coming out of this fitting. If we do, then the seals inside the cylinder may be bad. You also wouldn't want any air here. That could mean that you have a bad clamp cylinder valve. Just so we're clear on how a valve works, this is the supply. and the supply is normally supplying to either A or B, and when you press it in, it supplies to the other one and exhaust from the first one. So B, A. There's constantly a supply here, so you can use your valve to check your cylinder. If you're uncomfortable checking your cylinder in the circuit, you can remove the cylinder from the circuit and use a blower and put a blower in the fitting and put pressure into the cylinder and then feel the other end for a leak. That will tell you whether or not air is bypassing the seals in your cylinder. It'll also tell you if your cylinder is working properly. Your cylinder may have a little bit of a different fitting like this, but you can still use a blower with a rubber tip on the fitting to test the cylinder. Another component in the system is the rotating union, or the air guider, and its purpose is to take air in one location and redistribute it as the turn plate rotates. One of the symptoms of this could be weak clamps or a leak here, and a leak can be found easily in this with a spray bottle with a little soapy water. I hope this video has helped you understand how your Weaver tire changer works internally, and may help you to troubleshoot any issues you have with leaks in cylinders or valves. And as always, thanks for using Derek Weaver Company for all your automotive equipment needs.